Welcome to On the Chain.
So let's jump into this very first story here. This first one comes to us. This is, you're like, Michael Miebach. Who's that? That's none other than the CEO of I want to say Mastercard. Yep, CEO of Mastercard over there, and he is put out this nice little tweet. He says, we're partnering with several central banks to help them research new digital currency projects. It starts with understanding what they want to achieve with the technology, then building in transparency, consumer privacy, and stability. That sounds really good to me, because with any technology, understanding what they want versus what we the people want, will the two sides mix? Central banks, again, to go trip through that, is that the central banks, third-party entity, usually not attached to the government anyway. The Federal Reserve here is a third party. Nobody knows really what goes on there. No one's ever seen their balance sheet. Nobody knows what they've been investing money in, because there's a lot of debt that's paid on the money that's borrowed, because that's how our systems work. The federal bank was, central bank was set up on a debt-ridden system, and this is how they most work. And they usually have a shelf life of 40 to 50 years. We're running a little over 100 years on the Federal Reserve. And I say let's return to Andrew Jackson days, when he got rid of the second central bank after 20 years, after their charter ran out. Funny thing was, they got smart, and the next time they didn't have a charter, right? They didn't have an expiration date that could be revoked. So it's way too much power. If you want to see why the economies are crashing around the world, look no further than central banks. But let's help them achieve with this new technology, transparency, consumer privacy, and stability. Sounds great on paper. I know I might be the lone voice out there, because when I compare my notes to everybody else out there, I'm like, okay, I'm lockstep with Warren Davidson. Everyone's hating on Davidson. Everyone's been hating on me for having this stance. They're like, Chip, it's just a simple technology and this and that. I'm like, well, yeah, my point goes back to the fact that I don't like central banks. So I don't like the whole centralized anything. Let's get to decentralization. It's like, if we keep playing that centralization game, do we ever get to the part where we're going to get into decentralization? No, we just keep allowing to print more money, and it's like, it's another outlet. What's it really going to be backed by? There aren't any assets there. Every government in the world is in debt. So what are you going to do? You're going to spin up something new, and it's going to be back to what? It's going to still be an instrument of debt. How is that going to work? So that's really, it goes beyond the privacy stuff. Let's start at the central bank. My goal is to get rid of them all, right? The US could be the very first one. Be interesting to see what happens in 2024. Be interesting to see what happens to the Federal Reserve in that banking system. But let's get through this tweet. Gosh, that was a long-winded wrap around there. But he goes on to say that we're working towards the goals with the new CBDC partner program with Mastercard, teaming up with a handful of key blockchain /Web3 /payment players, so we can learn from each other. This part of it's very good. I think the more people you get involved in the conversation, the better. And he says that I'm excited to, with this new collaboration brought together, lists of Ripple first, the Edema group. This one here is Fluency. Then you've got Gasecki and Devrient, Consensus. We know our old pals Joe Lubin over at Consensus, Consult Hyperion, and Fireblock. So it's an interesting assortment, if you will, of people that have been brought together here. So, there are a couple of the names in here you might recognize, a couple of them you might not. I'm sure everybody recognizes Consensus. Obviously, that's Joe Lubin, and we know Joe Lubin from, well, gosh, we've covered him for the last couple of years. All of this whole ETHgate scenario tied back all to I like this one, Chippings. That's Consult Hyperion, but it's funny their symbol there, or whatever their tagline there is. So there's a whole little sort of a thing that they put together here. And again, it's good to have a conversation. It's good to pull people together. I think it is. I think it's a healthy conversation. And again, we really don't know outside of what China's done. We've just heard a lot of stories. We've heard, now I kind of like I'm more interested in a stable coin. If you think about a stable coin, it has all the same properties, right? The interoperability, all of the sort of same key aspects that you would imagine that you would have, where a CBDC has programmability. Now it's I don't know. It's the jury is still out, because the programmability, I'm not sure if it exists actually on the XRPL, obviously they would be using a private version of that because they're not going to have all the transactions public. That's not going to happen. So there's a private version of it. And so again, after a lot of the research that I've done, I've not been able to 100% determine what that looks like. But what we do keep hearing a lot of is the privacy, because that's the one thing that we're all concerned about. So jumping back to this, is safe the new sexy? CBDCs, trust in the evolution of money. This is the article over there on Mastercard. And it talks about the central banks exploring, issuing their own digital currencies. Yeah, I mean, how about a stable coin? A stable coin doesn't have any programmability, but no, they're not talking about that. So they do say is a CBDC is essentially a digital version of a fiat currency backed by the government and therefore far less speculative than crypto. That right there is a bold-faced lie. This is a ridiculous thing. First of all, trying to even conflate the two issues has nothing to do with each other. If you say less speculative than crypto, well, how so? If we're going to compare CBDCs to anything, we're not going to compare it to crypto because CBDC is not crypto, right? And if we're going to compare it to anything that resembles a blockchain, we're going to compare it to probably the closest you could compare it to is a stable coin, right? So where is the speculation in a stable coin? Are you expecting that stable coin to go up, that you own $1 million and let's say, pick your flavor of stable coin. And if you've seen it on the charts, you've gone and looked at the charts, and sometimes it's just under $1, and sometimes it's like I saw yesterday, one of them was like $1.02. So it's like if you were to sell that at $1.02 across $1 million, oh, you'd make, you'd make your 2%, right? But where is the speculation inside of crypto that they're going to compare this to? This is where it goes off the rails for me, and the deep understanding is not there. They're trying to get you comfortable with it. It's run by the government. Trust us. Trust the government. Don't trust the third party or a startup or someone that's trying to solve a problem out there that has been around for 5, 10 plus years. Don't trust that. No. Trust us because we are the government. And this whole thing, they're gaining momentum. I don't see it gaining any momentum. Exactly, I see the opposite. That even though people may say, hey, the government's going to do it anyway, well, history is going to repeat anyway, too. And if you remember World War II, it was pretty commonplace to put people to death just because of their faith, right? So that was a pretty outgoing thing. And they're like, oh, that'll never happen again. Well, I hate to tell you, but it's happened multiple times. So Pol Pot, it's happened there in the 70s, right? And then there was the photography where they photographed the women and children before they executed them. So over 1 million lives lost. And they said, well, that'll never happen again. But it happens over and over and over again. But like, hey, let the banks at it. What the hell? It's just the technology. It's not a big deal. Why should we worry about it? I don't see it gaining momentum. I see a lot of concerns about it, even for people who are pro-CBDC. There is a lot of concerns around the privacy issue of it. It says, there's another stat. It says 93% of central banks are engaged in some form of work on CBDCs, and 4 retail CBDCs are already full live circulation, according to the Bank for International Settlements, the BIS, another useless organization. If you ask me, I don't think anybody did, but I'm here to give you my opinion. So there you go, another useless, corrupt organization who has plans for you. They got lots of plans and lots of explaining to do. But what they tell you, what they do their actions actually match what they say. Interesting. So it says there are many questions that central banks need to consider, says Jesse McWaters, who leads the global regulatory advocacy at Mastercard. And this includes the role of the privacy sector in CBDC insurance, security, privacy, and interoperability, such as how a CBDC works with other commonly used payment mechanisms, what specific challenges CBDCs would solve, and whether or not they're even the right tool for the job. I like how they're kind of speculating, but they left the most important part about that out of here, which is which I think they have to hark on a little more, is the privacy. The interoperability, we know that that's covered. The security part, yeah, we kind of know that that's a little bit covered. Issuance, that's another faulty one. We don't know exactly how the issuance is going to happen. And if there's central control anywhere, regardless if there's that type of programmability to a granular level, well, I'm sorry, Jim D, you said the wrong thing in the on the chain chat, and guess what? As a result, we're gonna have to we're going to have to expire your CBDCs, and by the end of the day. So good luck. Hope you can figure out a place to put all that. Sounds silly. I know you're like, well, come on, Chip. That's outlandish. There's no way that somebody would do something so ridiculous like that. Hey, it can happen. So Anthony Welfare, he commented on Michael Miebach's tweet over here. He said, excited to be working with Mastercard on the digital currency and the CBDC projects. Ripple's launch of the inaugural government-issued national stablecoin in collaboration with the Republic of Palau, in addition to work on 4 CBDC pilots.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.